Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast for men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast. Well, hello, Deborah Johnson here with the Women at Halftime, the podcast. It's great to be back with you today. We have a wonderful little message today with the possibility of living to 100. And I've wanted to do this message for a little while. I've been doing a little research. I get a newsletter called The Longevity. And it's just kind of interesting with all of the advances medically. But I started asking myself the question, do I really want to live to 100? You know, we see those wheelchairs, we see, you know, the problems with, you know, wrinkles as they're coming on, medication, caregivers. And if you've gone through caring for a parent, you know all too well this sort of part of life. And so, you know, I started thinking, do I really want to live to be 100? And the possibilities are just increasing that we will do that just because of some of the medical advances. So, but what I think about is the impact, the increased impact that I can have if I live that long. And so taking care of myself right now is really important. And I want to be able to continue having that sort of impact. So as I approach this today, I hope you really stay with me because I'm going to cover a couple different areas. And I always, of course, you want to connect with me with the newsletter. I always put out an article every time with one of our podcasts. And so you can get to that with goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. You can always get there very easily. It's free. It comes out every week. I do not spam you. goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And you can get there from any one of my websites as well. Deborah Johnson Speaker, womenathalftime.com, any of those. So, but this is just a great a message today because there was one flight I was on and I saw like the number of wheelchairs. There must have been 20 or 30. I mean, it was so many. I'm thinking, I don't want to really live my life that way if I can keep active. So I'm going to give you some research today that I've done and just some of the ideas to just stay active. So, and this is a question that many ask at mid-career and at the halftime of life too. The halftime of life officially by the internet is after age 40. So it does come quicker than we think. But it's, you know, how do we want to live our life at this point? And we start thinking about how long we want to work and everything else. And I don't want to quit my work. I don't want to quit writing. I just like to have an active lifestyle and a lifestyle that is productive at this point, doing some travel with my husband. So those are some of my personal goals. And that includes the freedom of working really anywhere for me. And it could be working online, you know, around the world. We were just in South Africa and being able to do a live stream as long as you have good internet. So there's possibilities that are opening up and at points where you can still travel. Now, some people listening to this, you're thinking, oh, I've traveled so much for work. I just want to stay home. That's fine too. That's great. But still having a lifestyle that you enjoy is just very, very important. So first of all, we know that diet is very important. It has a great deal to do with healthy living, but especially for centurions. There are many headlines that tout all of these different diets from Mediterranean, from low carbohydrate to the keto diets. And I love that quote from 440 BC. The great Greek physician, Hippocrates, he said, "Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food." Okay. So food can act as a sort of medicine for our life. And I really like the Mediterranean diet. I like just the balance it brings with your fruits and vegetables and with the nuts and with the good, healthy fats. But Hippocrates, he's right. The nutrition and physical activity and social activity, all of those things together, they have a huge impact on our longevity. And we're going to discuss all of them in this podcast. So stay with me. We're going to get to nutrition first. And don't be discouraged by this. It's like, oh, I've heard all of this. You don't need to lecture. I'm not going to lecture. I hope just to give you a little bit more insight on how important this, all of this is at this point in our life. And I've written some other articles about it, and I'm not a nutritionalist, but the balance of life is extremely important. And it's even more important as we age, as we gracefully grow older. Now, it's hard to find a one size fits all with nutrition. It just is. You can't say, this particular diet. And as we look at some of these studies, and I'm a nerd, I love to look at some of the studies, mice aren't humans. And we can see these studies that are done with mice, and it's great that they are finding these inroads. But we have to realize that every person is different and every body makeup is different. So that's really important to factor in on our nutrition, on how much we eat, and even some of our nutrition timing. So, but we can see that there are food groups that can greatly influence heart disease and even cancer. And that's really important to look at some of those studies as far as that. So, and you need to know your body and you need to know your energy level. Now, this is really important to really understand what your body does. And that might take a little bit of journaling and writing down, some of the things, some of the effect on this, especially blood sugar levels and your energy level. And so if you look around, and this was really brought to the forefront when I was just speaking with a doctor, we were out on a tour, and this doctor says, you're not going to see any person that's in their 90s, they're not going to be obese and they're not going to be overweight. Those people don't live as long. And when you realize this, you realize how important it is to keep that weight maintained. You don't have to be skinny, but you have to have a good maintenance of your weight. And they usually also keep active. Now, this is important when you're looking at this living to 100. I mean, 100, that's a long time when you're thinking about the number of years ahead when you start counting that. So, don't discount every day and how that is progressing for you. So in a 2018 study, there were 7,447 participants at high risk for cardiovascular disease. Now, I'm quoting some of these statistics because they're interesting. And the subjects were randomized to a Mediterranean diet that was supplemented with extra virgin olive oil or mixed nuts. And it was to a controlled diet. And this particular diet where they added the good fats and the good oils, they were 30% lower of heart disease. So that's a huge number, 30% lower in this journey of living to 100, 30%. Now, when you think about, I'm not a real numbers person, but that's with the heart disease, that's pretty serious, and that can affect the rest of your life. So I definitely think about adding those healthy fats, and with the good nuts, the avocado. So I know people that eat avocado every single day, and you do have to add up the calories, but realize that those are very, very good fats for you, and adding those in instead of, I remember when low fat used to be it was just all the craze. And so we'd eat a lot of it, but that now we know we need to discount that, of course. But now, even though, and as far as other diets, like the vegan diets, there are definite advantages to vegan diets. But also, those can also have an increased risk of fractures. In fact, there was a high percent, it was a 43% increase in the fractures and 2.3-fold increase of hip fractures compared to non-vegan diets. So you have to look at all aspects of some of these diets. And I want to encourage you to do that, because we go off on these kicks and we want to save the animals, we want to say all these other things and think about our health. And so just be very, very aware that there are advantages, but there are also disadvantages to some of these nutritional choices that you make. And so the moderation, the balance is very, very important. And I take that approach, although I love my dark chocolate, and I can really justify that quite a bit with the antioxidants. But yes, in moderation is just increasingly important as we age. Fruits and vegetables, they're just so good for you. But there are diets that are even discounting fruits and vegetables. I looked up this carnivore diet, and it was really interesting how they discount some of those fruits and vegetables. And those are great for you, those leafy greens. So don't discount some of those just because of a particular diet. So really do your research for your body and look at all aspects. Again, keto diet, which is great. A lot of people live a lot longer with this keto diet. But again, you have to know what your body is and look at that moderation. And every single body type, they react differently. Also, nutritional timing is important. I have a free download on this in the article. You can link to that free download. One of our sons was a trainer, and he actually had 2% body fat when he was in high school, which is, it's not very healthy, but he put on 30 pounds of muscle just with nutritional timing and healthy eating. And it was pretty amazing. He's really kept that on, a lot of that muscle mass, just by the way he eats and that nutritional timing. So there's really something to that. These are common sense solutions. So don't throw out common sense. We have a world today that, we're thrown with the news and the media. There's so many things thrown at us. Common sense. You've got that brain, do your research, and look at all aspects of this. Physical activity. Let's get to that. We've got our nutrition down, and I'll review all of these just real quick, but at the end. But what about your physical activity? This is extremely important. You've got to keep moving. Keep the weight at a moderate weight and keep moving. Very, very important to do that. Now, our muscle mass starts decreasing in our 30s, which can be quite depressing as you're thinking it's decreasing every year. I think it's like 3 to 5% every single year. And by the age of 60, this starts even accelerating more, and even by the age of 80. So it's really important to have a balanced movement as far as a program. Walking, it's great. You don't have to run, you don't have to jog, but walking is extremely important. And walk up hills if you can. That's great. It's not as hard on the body. Weights. Some sort of program with weights is extremely important. I wrote an article on this. I will link to it also in the show notes and in the actual article. Greg and I did this, my husband, who was a professional athlete, and we did we've done a couple podcasts together on just physical exercise. And this particular one in the weight bearing exercise, extremely important. They don't have to be heavy weights, but keeping the muscle mass, extremely important. That's important. So we've got just that movement, that walking, that using that weight. It will help keep your body moving and firm. Also, and thinking about your core is, when we think about the midsection of our body, that's extremely important in keeping that firm and keeping your breath. when you walk, you breathe, and you want to think about taking those breaths. I was kind of surprised because I've been musician and singer, and the breathing part is a little bit more challenging for me at this stage in my life. And I was actually surprised at that because I've done quite a bit of singing. But that deep breath, it's why I hear some of these singers that I've always said you can hear the older singers that you can drive a truck through their vibrato because they're so fast. They're so wide vibrato, but that comes from your breath control. So keeping that in mind, taking that good breath and even warming up the breath. When you walk up a hill, I find when I'm taking my morning walks, usually I do a little cardio exercise first, and then I take our dog for a walk and I walk up a hill. I'm out of breath. And it's because sometimes my breath, if I don't warm it up, it has to warm up. And Greg, my husband, he says that's part of our exercise too, in warming up that breath. We don't realize that we have to warm up the breath. Now, anyone who desires to live to that 100, that centurion, they have to keep moving. And so I've quoted some studies, and it's interesting. I quoted a couple of doctors, such as Dr. Nitish Mittal. He says that muscles are essential for whole body metabolism and the function of many organs. So working out is not just important for our muscle mass, but even keeping all of our organs working correctly. So that should be an inspiration as we want to have a good quality of life as we gracefully grow older, as I say. And physical activity, you can even factor this in your travel. And I have done this because I want to keep my husband active. Of course, I want to keep active as well. So I've booked in some of our travel at this point in our life that is active. We just took a trip, and these are a little bit higher. I was going for the top travel in a couple of these because I figure we have like this 10 to 20 year span of traveling together. And so I booked a couple trips that we have taken on Back Roads, which is a wonderful organization. We just went to South Africa, but we did bike riding and we did hiking. And I tell you, a couple of the hikes were very challenging. But on most of these trips, you can decide how much activity you want to do. You could stay in the van, you could not do a particular hike. On a bike ride, you could ride along. All of that you can do. They usually give you options on those, and they have varying degrees of difficulty in some of these traveling tours. We're doing one coming up, the VBT travel, which is on biking, but it'll tell you all of the different levels and how much you can bike each day and how the choices that you have. So there's a lot of different options. We did a snowshoeing trip, but just to keep active. And these are good goals. They don't always have to be hugely expensive. You can do all of your own planning if you'd like, and to rent a bike, or you can go to a place that has bikes. We've gone to little bed and breakfasts that have bikes, and we can plan our own biking. So there's a lot of options there just to keep active. And so to make this a part of your lifestyle and to take that break. And it's so wonderful just to be outside. And it's good for the mind, definitely. So we've talked about that nutrition and we've talked about exercise. And again, I'm not a trainer, I'm not a nutritionalist, but I am at a point of my life where I want to help people at that mid-career, at halftime, make these years the best you can possibly make. And this is a huge part of it, huge part of it. And number 3, I'm going to touch on is the social activity. And this is coming, I am approaching this from an introvert. I'm an introvert. I'm an intentional extrovert because I speak. I've done so much performing on huge stages, but I can sit behind my computer and just do this. And so I plan times that I can be with people, be with organizations, because I tend to just kind of hibernate a little bit. So this is a very important part of life, is that social interaction and planning your social times, because it's good for the mind. It's good for the stress relievers. And there's some great books. I've put those links also in the show notes. One called Growing Young, but Marta, let's see if I can say her name right, Zaraska, sounds Russian actually, but she noticed that relationships were a central factor in health. And she stated if we want to live longer, healthier lives, we should prioritize staying connected and staying kind and involved in our community. And she does have some of this that was based actually on research. So, and the effects of the social interaction, it was very, very strong for those with larger social network. And they were actually about 45% less likely to die, which that's kind of a big number there. So social interaction is very important. And loneliness, it's been found to increase that cortisol and inflammation and physically. So they have the physical effects as well as the emotional effects. And so taking time to connect with each other, that releases that oxytocin. And I'm glad I could say that right at this point. I had to practice that because the Oxycontin I've gotten mixed up with oxytocin, but oxytocin can reduce the pain. It's that natural sort of stimulation that we have in our body, our brain, and it can reduce pain and change the way our brain responds to stress. So very, very important to just give those a chance, give that oxytocin a chance to be able to work for us. And some ways that we can reduce that social connection, they're through the volunteering. There are churches that love to involve you. I mean, you can get involved in so many different ways in churches. And I have been involved, of course, in churches through the years. And so, there's the children's and there's feeding the hungry, going out and doing even trimming plants and helping out. There's so many things that you can do that have groups together, and they're great fun. You meet people when you work, which is a lot of fun. Professional organizations, of course, and keeping those relationships alive, which it takes a little work, but it's great to do. And reading clubs, those have been popping up all over the place now. So there's just a lot of options. And with the meetups, I get these notices and all these different meetups. And so there's a lot of options to take advantage of. And of course, and even some of the senior communities, they have pickleball groups. They have all sorts of groups that you can get involved with. I have actually performed at a lot of groups in some of those larger areas, groups of 300 to 500 that get together for these concerts, and it's just good social interaction. And these are just people 50 and above. So, as we gracefully grow through these years, thinking of those sort of networks, and people are moving out of state, you've got to establish new networks. So it takes some work to be able to do. And I wanted to bring up one of the silent killers of COVID, of what we've gone through with all the shutdowns. And that was just that loneliness. And it's revealed more and more, not only with our seniors being locked up, but of course our youth, and not having the interaction with each other. And it was very, very detrimental. I think we are finding more and more of that now as we are looking back at the effects of how this was. And, the Zoom helped, the phone calls helped, but there's nothing like a great hug and the interaction together, that eye contact together. It's just different. So there's new research almost daily. And of course, I love to read that research and the new research on possibility of living to 100. Really is becoming more and more possible with gene therapy. Gene therapy is where you replace like a specific damaged gene. And they've been doing some of this research on MS and Parkinson's, and the possibilities that opens up. AI, your artificial intelligence, how it's increased even the research there with the deep learning. 3D printing, that's fascinating. They're able to print like an ear or even a heart. They're trying some of these things out now. The studies are out there. So I'm just saying that this is progressing along, and you don't know what the 5 years ahead. I mean, we are talking about some exponential growth here in these areas. So the possibilities, you need to start thinking now about that lifestyle, nutrition, and the exercise that you're getting, keeping the movement and just eating in moderation and keeping your mind sharp too. And I've always promoted getting involved, of course, in music. I have my Learn Music Again, but that keeps the mind sharp, and just to see what music can do for people, especially in warding off dementia, or people remember music. That's what it's very sticky. So, and the coordination there, and it's so enjoyable. It's a stress reliever. So find something. It could be art. It could be painting. It could be something in the arts. So the arts are very, very powerful. So I hope this has been encouraging for you. I'm putting a link in the article as well for the Longevity Insider. It's one of those newsletters that I really enjoy. It comes directly to my inbox. It's free. And it's kind of fun with some of the advances. And it's just research that's being done, but it's interesting, actually very interesting. So, but I do encourage you to pay attention to your nutrition, pay attention to your exercise, good habits, extremely good habits. And you see as living to 100, importance of having good habits will stay with you. And even the tiny habits, I've got articles on those. I've got podcasts on those with the interview, even for tiny habits and for all that's entailed in establishing good habits that aren't going to be so difficult to put into place. So, but I encourage you in that and in your nutrition. Please connect with me, womenathalftime.com. Again, get on my newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And my speaker site, I love to do live events. I also do virtual events. Deborah Johnson speaker. I speak on the hero inside, and also on what it takes to get off of an endless roundabout. A lot of people are stuck still. So I love to be able to help you work through those steps. So, and you can always find music as well, DJ Works Music. So again, thank you for being here with me today on this possibility of living to 100. And as we've seen, there's definitely a possibility of doing that. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll look forward to being with you again next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at womenathalftime.com.